Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world today, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Chad, and I'll be the moderator of today's webinar. Today, we'll be discussing how to grow your residential contractor business in 2022. Specifically, a lot of the conversation today will revolve around the findings from the 2022 Homeowner Research Study, which really sought to find out what homeowners look for when researching and hiring residential contractors to do work on their home or business. We have a fantastic panelist with us today. We also have a wonderful host. I'll introduce our host in just a moment, but before we do, I wanted to just go over a couple of the technical aspects of today's webinar. You'll notice on the right side of your screen, there is a chat box. If at any point during today's webinar you have any technical issues, any questions for me, our host, or our panelist, please feel free to type those in there. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible, but if we don't get to your question, we'll follow up with you through email after the webinar. We're also going to be asking you to answer a few poll questions during today's webinar. This will just help to make things a little more fun and interactive, and will also help our host and our panelists to understand really who's in the webinar today so they can shape the conversation around what you're looking for. But without further ado, I wanted to introduce our host. Justin Judy has been with ArcSite for a number of years, and he's been helping residential contractors grow their business, save time, save money, and get more sales. He's going to be a fantastic host for today's webinar today. He'll introduce our panelists in just a moment, but with no further ado, Justin, I'd love for you to take it away. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. Yeah, like you said, you got some awesome panelists today. I'm really excited for the discussion we're about to have around the findings from the report. The report surveyed over 1,000 homeowners around how they choose contractors, what's important to them, types of research they do, all sort of things that should really help you kind of serve as a catalyst to making the decisions that are important to your business. And if attending the webinar live with us today, you can choose in that same chat panel, there's a section for handouts. You can download the report right there. If not, at any time, you can just go to arcsite.com/report and you can download your very own copy of the homeowner survey report, which has way more content than we'll be able to cover today. But yeah, kind of bouncing forward from there. So this is kind of the table of contents. We're going to run through some brief introductions, go through the report, researching contractors, things like cost and budgeting, how they evaluate, what tech trends are in the industry, and then key takeaways. But you should also already be seeing your first poll. So if you guys don't mind answering that poll now, just kind of gives us some insight into how you guys think. Like Chad said, just really getting to know the attendees also helps us kind of target the content and make sure it's as valuable to you guys as possible. But for the real reason that you guys are here, and the real reason we put a lot of this together, is we brought on some key experts from specific industries that can really help shine light on some of these answers, because they're the real world folks who have the boots on the ground daily, run the sales teams. They understand what goes into growing a very successful business, starting with Brian. Brian's the president of Durham Artificial Grass up in Canada. They've been around, for 5-6 years. He's also ran a successful horticulture business since the early 60s. And they are just exploding with growth. So Brian's a perfect expert to talk about that. Bill Crawford has 25 years plus of experience in the basement waterproofing and foundation industries. He's the owner of Rainmaker Internet Marketing, which prototypically helps businesses grow in that space. And then Joe Everest, if you guys are YouTube channel watchers, Joe Everest, fence expert, runs third generation fencer since the mid 50s. Always has done things, a very specific way. And he very much is about education and teaching people how to grow their businesses, do things specific ways. And like I said, their family business has been around since the 50s. So there's no shortage of expertise on the call today. We're definitely going to have years and years of real veteran leadership to lean on and to really discuss some of this stuff and maybe share some best practices with you folks at home too. So awesome. Yeah. So as it starts, kind of like we said earlier, like Chad said, this is from our 2022 homeowner survey report. It's data from over 1,000 homeowners that has just been kind of sent out strategically to all different demographics to make sure it's an even sort of response. And it'll allow us to get some insight into how customers think. So when you guys are setting up your growth goals and initiatives, you can really be thinking from your customer's shoes and perspectives. So when researching contractors, the first slide I kind of want to stop and really chat about here for 2 seconds is where people go nowadays in 2022. So Bill, your expertise is a lot in marketing. So do you mind just kind of running us through what initial thought goes through your head when you learn that about 2/3 of people first go right to a search engine to research and find a contractor?
I'm not surprised at all. And Google dominates that space, right? More than anybody. I've been to Google's headquarters a few times, and they shared some data that I will never forget. And they said that more and more homeowner people are researching companies more than ever before. And it's not because they're more cynical, but it's because it's just so easy to do a background check on a company because no one wants to get ripped off by a contractor. So I'm not surprised at all. I would point out that, in my opinion, most contractors don't have great profiles on Yelp, but the ones that do really well. Like they walk into that home and they're closing probably 80% of those jobs.
That's awesome. What about you, Joe? What jumps to your mind here when you look at this slide?
Yeah, I mean it makes complete sense. Search engine, and again, Google being the giant in that category. I'm a big fan of just obviously YouTube, Facebook as well, but YouTube having common ownership with Google always helps. My thing is to try to encourage contractors to do more video marketing, primarily through YouTube because of this slide illustrates it pretty clearly. People go to search engines when they're looking for contractors. Whether it's to research the contractors or just to learn more about the trade itself. So yeah, not surprising. Search engine is huge.
Awesome. Cool. And then Brian, I know I follow you on LinkedIn, and you're very active with your posts and keeping everything fresh out there. Is there anything you do specifically that helps you gather referrals or rank higher on things like search engine results?
Honestly, Todd, our marketing in-house person looks after that, but I do know that live content, updated content, asking for fresh testimonials, it doesn't hurt to not be a 5 out of 5. If you're a 4 out of 5 or something like that, it shows some honesty with people. It doesn't hurt to have a ranking that isn't, like I said, all 5s. And just keep your content fresh. And like Joe had said, we're actually going to be launching our YouTube channel this year to show people videos and, how-to things and add some more credibility so they can actually see projects getting done. I think it really helps to educate the consumer for sure. You know what you're doing, and this is why we do certain things, and make them an educated consumer.
Awesome. Cool. Like guys, most of you watching at home probably will not be overly shocked by anything on this slide. I think it's just kind of the way of the world here in 2022 that we live in now. But what is the main thing? Like it says, it jumps here. So 38% of homeowners rely on referrals. Does anybody here on this call have like a specific referral program or something you've seen success with that you'd like to share with the folks at home?
So,
go ahead.
We don't necessarily have any certain hit. This is always works. If you're honest with people, they feel that they've gotten a fair deal for what they've got. A quality company's behind it, and you're going to be there. They're more than happy to pass your name along to make sure that their friends and the people in their network are looked after trustfully and properly.
Yep. So basement waterproofing is not one of those home improvements that people tend to brag about. It's not like a new kitchen kind of a thing. So it's a little bit harder to find referrals in our space. What I have seen work is having someone go to the job afterwards, like a week or two, kind of really high quality, making sure the whole system, the initial contact, it was easy to schedule, good communication, the job went well, the cleanup was great, all that stuff. If they didn't get a customer review already, get it there, but then introducing them to the referral program, and that would be, they would get $500 for referring, and then their friend would get a $500 discount for if they went ahead with the work. People spend so much on advertising. Any company would much rather have a referral than just giving it to like Google Ads or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. Very interesting point. What about you, Joe?
A point too on referrals. One place that is surprising where we see a lot of referrals come in from is Facebook, specifically Facebook groups, neighborhood groups, or city groups. One of our experienced partners here, their whole job is to monitor kind of the social chatter and then kind of jump into that conversation so that what we'll see is someone in a I Love Springfield Facebook group says, hey, who does fence? And then so we won't actually jump into that conversation until someone says, well, we love Ozark Fence. They do great work for us. And then we'll jump into the conversation and say, thank you so much for the referral. Here's a great way to get started on your next fencing project with a link to our online quote tool.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah. The second thing people do in researching contractors outside of go to people they trust, family, friends, things like that is they read reviews. So Brian, you had an interesting point on, reviews and things earlier, but I'd love to hear kind of how you guys where do you see success there? Is there something specific that you could potentially do to incentivize reviews? I've heard from a lot of different contractors that they really try to encourage clients to leave reviews because, that is your free marketing at that point if a client leaves a review. But I'd love to kind of hear you guys' take on that.
And reviews are so critical, right? It's 20% of the rankings in the map section is your reviews and the sentiment of the reviews. So because we do internet marketing and there's only so much we could do, we can't get reviews for people, right? So we coach contractors on how to do that. And we really encourage them to create a culture of customer reviews. So that means that everyone understands how important reviews are. Funny, I was talking to a contractor a week ago and I asked him about customer reviews and he goes, "Oh, my people know about customer reviews. They don't get paid from the job if they come back without a customer review." And I was like, "Whoa, all right, that's going a little bit overboard." But you tend to get more, way more reviews if you're asking in front of them versus sending an email. So I'm a big fan of the sales rep mentioning it, and then the foreman mentioning on day one, and then not only getting payment, but then getting that review, because your ultimate goal is to create a satisfied customer, not just get paid and go back to the office.
Yeah, we've got a program in place in where all of our team members, whether it's the experienced officers or it's the actual production crew or the office staff that interacts with the clients, if they get named in a review, then they get special recognition during our monthly meeting, and we usually bring that up in the conversation with the client, just throughout it, not necessarily asking for the review because that, depending on where we're talking about, that probably violates terms of service, but just saying, hey, in our annual or in our monthly meetings, I get special recognition. If I were to be mentioned in a review, we ask for honest reviews. We don't necessarily ask for specific star ratings or anything like that. But if you're willing to leave a review and you mention me, I'll get special recognition. People tend to leave reviews for people rather than leave reviews for companies, it seems like.
We find the same thing. Our client representatives will ask for a review. The team leaders will also ask people if they wouldn't mind doing a review. And we'll even offer, if it makes it a little bit easier for you, because we know everybody's really busy, we can either text or email you a link to take you right to where we'd like to have the review placed. And we find good success with that. And I also agree that a lot of the reviews mention the people that work with us more than our company, saying how great they were to deal with, and it was a really enjoyable experience. And they really like to share a good experience, especially with the team members that are on site. We do a similar thing. There's special recognition in our monthly meetings for the top 3 getting the most reviews type thing.
Justin, if I could just mention, I like that all 3 of us kind of honored this. I think we're all against incentivizing customers to give reviews. And it does totally violate the terms of, Yelp's the leader. They're the toughest on that, but it violates Google's policies as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes perfect sense because at the end of the day, I'm not a contractor. I don't do the work. I pay people like you guys to do the work. And when I'm reading reviews, it does add that level of humanity to if you see something that isn't exactly perfect, hey, maybe this went wrong, but they fixed it, that kind of stuff. If it's all perfect, everything was great, Joe was the best I've ever seen, on everything, I'd be like, you never know. That makes you almost a little, take some of the humanity out of it a little bit. We'll find out later in the survey. There's a few slides we'll hit that'll kind of highlight, what people like about contractors. And a lot of that lends itself to what you guys just spoke about when it comes to the people versus the company. So you'll start to see that some of that stuff really makes a big importance there. Work examples, Brian, I know you're real big on this. Do you mind just kind of sharing a couple of tips and tricks real quick around the how you best see success sharing out examples of your guys' work?
So really, when you go to a client's place, they have a vision in their mind. You're not in their mind. You don't necessarily know exactly what they're thinking. So if you show different examples of the work that they've done, quite often they're like, hey, wait a minute, that one right there, that's what I'm picturing in my backyard, or something like that, maybe a little bit different or tweaked. It really brings to life the creativity that the people have that work with us. And then it helps get clarity to really, this is the problem that the client has, and how do they envision seeing it fixed? When they see examples of the work, it brings it right to life, so everybody's on the same page. A picture's worth 1,000 words. When they can see that, they can really relate, and they get a real good comfort level that you guys have done this before. You can build it this way. That's really what we want. So the work examples are just phenomenal.
Yeah, and I've seen. I mean, I know enough about all three of you guys to know, Bill being the marketing expert. When it comes to a successful marketing strategy, content nowadays is big. Joe's the YouTube expert essentially out of the three up there, and he understands that more than anybody. So, Joe, do you mind just kind of sharing like what sort of work examples or something somebody could highlight through content?
So I'm a very big fan of doing video walkthroughs once the project's complete to show. It does a few things, right? So preferably live videos, just because whether we're talking about YouTube or Facebook, both those platforms prefer live videos over recorded videos. But just a walk through the project. Obviously we do fences. So once a project's complete, typically either the experience officer, or you might call them salesmen, will go back to the job to walk the job. I say, pull out your phone. They record in 4K anymore, and they'll go live in typically 1080. Show your potential clients what you look for when the project's complete. Let them know that there's a quality control plan in place to where you're going to catch all the little things, and talk about that in the video. Hey, I'm looking for, in terms of fence, I'm looking for missing nails. I'm looking for loose boards. I'm looking for rocks that maybe were missed during the cleanup process, and walk them through that live. And then, because they're also getting an idea for, an example of your work, you're obviously showing off your finished work. But this isn't a sales video. It's an informative video on, hey, here is our quality control process when your project's complete. I'm a pretty big fan of content marketing, obviously.
Yeah. And any other overarching thoughts on the slide before we jump on to the next one?
I'll say this: we view reviews as evergreen referrals, right? That people can view this review as a referral, as long as the review is positive, of course.
Yeah.
But they can find this long term. They can find it years from now.
True.
I would add that I think it's really critical that the owners or someone on the team responds to every review like right away as well. And I totally agree with Brian that you don't need a 5.0. I think when people have a 5.0, those reviews become discredited. Actually, Bright Local has a lot of research on this that, like you're better off with like a 4.7 or 4.8 than a 5.0. It's just more believable. But, you guys that own your businesses, no doubt this has happened. Like maybe you didn't install the perfect job and someone posted a review, but then how you responded and reacted to that and how you made it right made all the difference in the world. And then people read that and they mentioned it and they said, you know what, I really respect it that you were authentic, and how you treated that customer that was upset really added a lot of credibility to your company.
That's awesome. Cool. So for those watching, how long, there's an actual poll. You guys can take the poll now for those of you watching at home. How long do you think homeowners spend researching contractors? I'll ask each panelist to just kind of have your answer in your brain. You don't need to share it out loud quite yet, but try to genuinely guess at how long you think a homeowner spends researching a contractor before making a choice for a home project. Give you guys a second to complete the poll. All right, and then we'll kind of go one by one with our panelists here just to get their thoughts on the answer. So how long do you think homeowners spend researching contractors? So 23% less than an hour, 43% 1 to 2, 19 3 to 5, 15 6 plus. So Joe, what does that mean to you? Like, was that close to what you thought?
Well, I was in the 3 to 5 camp. I really thought that they would do more research, especially, and this might vary probably trade to trade, whether it's a want versus a need, I suppose. 1 to 2 hours is, I guess, in the ballpark. I really thought it'd be 3 to 5.
Sure. What about you, Brian?
I'm not surprised by the results, and a lot of it I really feel depends on the size of the project. If it's a smaller project, a few $1,000s, then I don't think they would spend much more than an hour or two, because time is so precious to people now. Even though with COVID there's a lot of people at home more, there's still time is very precious. If it's a larger project, I can definitely see the 3 to 5 hours. or more, because it's going to be more involved, more in depth. They obviously want to know a little bit more about the contractor and those sorts of things. So I think for the smaller projects and it's spot on where it's 1 to 2 or less, and for larger projects I can definitely see 3 to 5 or more.
Yeah. What about you, Bill?
Yeah, I would say 1 to 2. That would be my guess. But I would also say that I think that customers return to their laptop to recheck their information and recheck it. It's not just a one time I got my 3 or 4 companies and making phone calls. So I think they collect data after the person comes to their house and they're going to research them more. But boy, I think this should be for those contractors that are not super proactive with getting reviews. Like I know contractors that just do phenomenal work. They do awesome work, but they're just not good at communicating it. And you wouldn't know for the person that is researching it, like they wouldn't know that this owner like takes so much pride into every single job. They have no idea. So and then here, the big companies that treat people just like another piece of their machinery, and they're dropping the ball, but they have so many reviews, they're hiding the negative work. Like those companies tend to do better because they're so proactive at getting so many customer reviews.
Got it. Yeah, and kind of just looking at this, from more of a consumer eye than a contractor, like 77% are more than an hour. So, if you don't have that kind of strong review culture, that online presence, everything that goes into a marketing strategy of a company, you could easily get washed under the rug because I guarantee this means they're researching more than one person. They're not going to spend 3 hours researching one company, I wouldn't assume. So, and if you look in the report itself, it's a little more deep dived into like you said, based on by budget, Brian, it can kind of show like how the answers vary. So that kind of stuff is all located in the report as well for the folks at home to see. So cost and budgeting is kind of a hot topic in the home repair world, because I don't think any of us budget like as much as we think we should for things like home repairs. And, some people are more proactive, some are more reactive. But what about 42% of people save less than $1,000 a year for any sort of a home repair, whether that's required or elective? Does that number surprise anybody?
No, not at all. Our financing options have really taken off over the last several years. I think mainly because of what this illustrates, that and fences are more of an elective, right? They're a want more than a need, unless the neighbor just brought home a puppy and you'd rather keep it out of your yard, sort of thing. But even then, they typically don't have a savings account to pull from. So us having that financing option really helps in this type of example. And our average ticket's $8,500, so well over 3/4 of this graph don't have that in savings.
Yeah,
I would agree with Joe. I mean, we're very similar in the artificial grass world. We're quite often a want more than a need. Although if they do bring that puppy home and it's bringing mud in, then they kind of need to look after the mud. So I would agree, and also I'm not surprised to hear that people aren't saving much for repairs. These days, people want so many things, they spend the money, and then when all of a sudden it's a need for a repair, it's like, oh, how are we going to handle this? So we're the same. We have financing options for people as well to help out in that regard.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I totally agree. When you hear those stats about how much credit card debt people carry and what percentage of people don't have $1,000 for an emergency fund, I'm not surprised by this at all. And yeah, financing I think is absolutely critical to offer it. Not everyone wants it, but in waterproofing, the average job is like $10,000 to $20,000. So most people don't have 10 to 20,000 sitting around, but when you put a number on the table of like say $300 a month, now that's more manageable.
No, absolutely. And that brings up to a good point. So how do you guys, as business owners, how do you equip your teams to best, deal with those sort of objections? I mean, I've heard financing so far. Is that kind of the main go-to nowadays, it sounds like? Because I don't know of another way that would really be overly successful, I assume.
Yeah, it's easier to close on, 300 versus 20 grand or something, right?
Yeah.
So all of our contractors in the basement waterproofing world pretty much have several companies that they deal with. And these banking companies have made it really easy to get approval right away. So it's a no-brainer. And so a lot of the sales processes, when you're kind of closing, you're steering it towards a budget. You're not leaving that huge number on the table. You're wanting to get to that smaller number as quickly as possible.
Sure. And so I guess I have a question here that just kind of popped up in my brain. How do you guys adjust your quoting process based on budget? Do you ask budget early in the process? I'm just kind of curious how you guys handle that.
Yeah. So the first step in our process is that the client uses an online quote tool. That way it visualize a satellite image of your home that then you can click and draw a fence around your yard, choose the style of fencing and the materials, that sort of thing. And then it will give you a budgetary price based on numbers that we put in. We would put in an average retail price, and it would create a budget from that based on a percentage below and a percentage above. So for us, the client already knows going into the project that it's going to range from X to Y. So usually on that first consultation phone call, then so it looks like your budget's going to come in between here and there. Is this something that you guys would like to have more information on financing on, or is it something that you'll take care of yourself? Or some version of that question.
Oh, I like that. So it kind of pre-qualifies leads for you a little bit as well.
Bingo.
With our first point of contact, we go through a series of questions, not a long list, but a fairly short list, get an idea of what need or want do they have, so we get an idea of what scope of project are they looking at. We'll give them an idea, usually within the first 15 minutes or so of a conversation. For what you're looking at, you likely range from this product, from this price to this price in that range. Is that something that suits your budget? If it is, great. If it's not, and you need to go a little outside your budget, would you be looking at some financing options? Because we have that available for you if you need it. And then that way, when we get to have the privilege of being at somebody's residence, we already know that they know the kind of budget we're looking at, and we're not wasting their time or ours. We're not going to offend them by coming up with this number that they were thinking would be like a quarter of what we were talking about. So for the sake of the homeowners, we really make sure they understand kind of what the budgetary needs would be for the project that they explained to us at the beginning, either by phone or email.
Sure. And Bill, in your space, do you see a lot of people kind of taking that pre-qualifying approach? Is that something you recommend as a marketing company, to recommend that people have something in place similar to what Joe does to kind of gather that info up front?
We don't. The only pre-qualifying that happens is people will not spend money in any city. There's certain areas that are very low income, so that
Sure.
they will basically not put their Google ads and their Angie money in those territories. But as far as a lead coming in, yeah, sometimes the scheduler will ask, what time do you get home from work? What time's your spouse get home from work? It's like, oh, we're not working. Okay, well, mental note. There's a little bit of a pause there, especially when it's crazy and there's all these other leads. And there's urgency. So, but we in our industry, we typically make a point to not pre-qualify at all. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I think it might have to do with when you're dealing with basement waterproofing. Sometimes there's mold growth going on. There's health issues. It's kind of like it's a need when it's raining sometimes, and then when the water stops and the water goes away, it's like, well, now there's not urgency because I don't see the water anymore. So the inspector is kind of looking for things like mold, dry rot, rust bugs, and so on that are drawn to moisture. So there's no pre-qualifying for the most part in our industry. And, we don't want reps to be doing that either, because if they sniff early on that the homeowner can't afford it, or the homeowner has played into the negotiation game early to kind of try to beat up the rep, sometimes the rep mindset gets affected because they're already defeated right away. They're thinking, oh, well, they're not going to be able to afford my pricing anyway. So in the sales process, we very much try to take that off of the table.
Yeah, awesome. No, and I love the kind of differing views because, like you said earlier, for the guys in the more elective type of home improvement projects that aren't like your basement's flooded, they may have less motivation if the budget doesn't line up. Whereas basement waterproofing, they'll find a way to pay it, in a lot of cases. So can definitely be a difference there too. So kind of into diving into this little deeper for cost and budgeting. So we asked homeowners, when faced with a large repair bill, how do you pay for it? And as you see, I mean, 37% were credit card. We have almost 15% people using financing for all. And this is for all projects. It's just what they plan on doing. It's not what they hope they'll do, but it's kind of just truthfully what they plan on doing. So are you guys surprised by anything here?
We're not surprised by anything here. We're set up to accept credit cards because we actually find in our market that's where a lot of the projects are being paid for. They like their points, they like their rewards from the credit card companies. So it's not really surprising to be honest with you. I will add when we do pre-qualifying, our client representatives don't do the pre-qualifying. It's our office that does. So when it gets to the client reps, they don't have a predetermined notion whether the person can afford or not afford the project. They know they've talked about budgeting and whatnot, and it's something they're ready to accept. So they go out with an open mind and really go to solve the problem for our clients. But I'm not surprised at all. The credit card's the leading one because we see that here constantly.
Yeah. Joe, are you the same way? Do you see mostly credit card or most finance mix?
Yeah, I think if we went back and looked at the last 3 years of our data, that 32% might be high, cash or check. Cash for us is almost non-existent. Only because cash usually comes up early in the conversation in regards to a discount. Do you offer a discount if I pay cash? And we don't. I mean, we still report it just the same as all other forms of income. So then it usually goes to a check just because that's more convenient. Again, keep in mind our average ticket's $8,500. So that sometimes does come in a check. I'd say a large percentage comes in credit card.
Yeah, I'm surprised at this. So in our space, financing is typically about 50%, and that might be due to the higher ticket item. So then in line of credit is interesting as well because a lot of these finance companies that support contractors in our space will offer 365 days, same as cash, no penalty on interest or anything like that. So, does that spill over into the finance percentage? Some of them will do that financing paperwork, and then that just gives them time to pay it off. Like they have a bonus coming up, so they'll just pay off that loan. But initially it gets set up quite often more with financing upfront.
Yeah, and see, our financing company offers a 0%, which is technically a credit card. It's a 0% for X months credit card. So I almost wonder if there's some spillover there from financing to credit card or to the previous point, line of credit.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And this was, like I said, posed to those 1,000+ homeowners. So this is how they're saying they pay for it,
Sure.
So it could be a little here or there, and it could fluctuate by market or industry massively. I mean, the bigger ticket jobs, I'm sure the cash or check number may decrease, whereas the smaller jobs, cash or check becomes more feasible, I would guess. And you brought up a good point here. And does anybody, and I don't mean this question to be weird or leading, but does anybody here give any discounts to incentivize people to pay a certain way? No? I mean, I've heard of contractors, doing that, like having a cash price versus a credit price. What would you guys say to our contractors listening at home who maybe employ a strategy like that?
Well, so some contractors in the fencing world will offer like a 3% discount for cash or check, only because that's a typical credit card financing fee or processing fee. So they'll build that fee into their price, then offer the discount if it's cash or check because they're not paying that processing fee. There's another industry leader in the fencing that has a fair point about discounts. Is discounts kind of cheapen the overall value of the product or the perceived value of the product you're offering. So rather than discounts, we usually offer at kind of on his lead offer upgrade credits, meaning that we might offer some sort of upgrade to the product depending on what style of fence they're getting. Just because, like I said, discounts do seem to cheapen the perceived value of the product.
Sure.
There's some legal issues about, when you're offering financing and you're offering discounts and so on. And that might vary state to state. So you got to watch that. I personally am a believer in discounts. I I know some companies will do, 3 or 4 or how many ever to get the job. I'm not a believer in that. I do believe in like one discount. I think if you're inside of a home and you look around, whether it's their couches or TVs or whatever, I bet you any money that every single thing there was bought and it had some kind of a discount on it. And I think people are used to, they're wanting something with some kind of a discount, but you have to maintain your credibility and you can't just keep like offering discounts and discounts.
Sure, yeah, because I mean, I'm thinking as a buyer, not as a contractor. Like, if they just keep dropping price, I'm like, well, then why'd you quote me so high to begin with? If you could easily do this, I'm like, well, I don't want to pay that. So
It works well, I think, and it's very, very real. Anyone who is scheduling jobs and trying to complete jobs on a certain day and moving this crew over for that crew, if a homeowner is willing to be really flexible, and sometimes they're close to the office, or like in the waterproofing business, sometimes we walk into empty basements and it's like, wow, this would be great to be able to pull up on the schedule just and have them be flexible. Those kind of jobs, when you come across that kind of a job that could really make you work more efficiently in the back, that's a job worthy of a discount for sure.
absolutely, yeah, okay. No, that makes perfect sense. I appreciate you guys' insight on that. And another thing too is I'm sure these numbers, like I said, fluctuate based on the pie chart we saw earlier with how much people are budgeting. So per year. So if you want to get all that kind of breakdown of how the answers relate, that's all located in the report as well.
We don't offer discounts during what we call the regular season, spring to fall. We're in a climate where winter sets in, so projects have to move inside. So if somebody has an indoor project, they want it done in the summertime, we'll offer them a slight discount to do it in the wintertime because we can't do outdoor work. So if they want to do it in what we consider our off season, we will say that we'll discount it slightly. But we go about the ways that we offer you a fair price for what you're getting. There's no room really for us to give you a discount. There's not overinflated prices or anything like that. So, but I do agree that you go buy a couch or a fridge, or it's going to be a discount or a sale when they're buying those sorts of things. So it's hard to get sometimes people thinking out of that mentality. Where's my discount? Because I'm doing this or doing that.
True. Yeah. Because I mean, we're all sale shoppers. I mean, if something's on sale, we'll probably target that thing. It's just kind of human nature if you can save $1, right?
Yeah.
So next poll question for those looking at home, take the poll now. For panelists here, just kind of get your answer in your head, similar to last time. Just kind of curious what you guys are thinking about. How many quotes do most homeowners solicit before making their selection? So over half said the number 3. Only 5% said 1, meaning 95% of these people are between more than one quote. So is that surprising to anybody here?
No, we actually ask people how many quotes will you be receiving, just for our own knowledge. And if they say just one, I'm just calling you. If it's not a referral from a really good friend of theirs or whatnot, then we suggest to them that they actually maybe call 2 more. So they have 3 as an average. So they make sure that they're comfortable with the decision. When you want to choose us to work with us, we want to make sure that you're comfortable, you're educated, and you can see the difference between the contractors. If somebody's coming here and they're going to educate you and explain why these products are better or why certain ways are better or whatnot, I always feel that people should be an educated consumer before purchasing. So we actually like it when people get 3, for sure. I know if I'm shopping for something, I get 3 and that's it, because I don't have time to get 4, 5, 6 quotes. So.
Yeah, definitely. And then Joe, how do you, if people have multiple quotes on the table, what sort of techniques do you coach your team up and stuff to use to kind of help stand out from the competition? Because it's not always just going to be a price number, I would assume.
No, well, and that's the thing is typically for us, we'll be on the higher end of the 3 to 5 bids, only because of the processes we have and the overhead. And so typically that question will come up, right? You're X percent higher than the low bid. Why is that? And typically what we'll ask a return question. We'll say, why do you think that is? That does seem like a big discrepancy. Why do you think? I'm not a big fan of, just trying to distance yourself from the other bids. I'm a pretty big fan of just saying what makes us different. We have a lot of overhead in office personnel to make sure your project goes incredibly smoothly. We have team members that their sole focus is communication, because I feel like communication is everything in a contracting project. But if it were a newer contractor or smaller contractor, maybe a few guys in a truck out there building fence, they probably don't have that, and their overhead's probably lower, and they shouldn't be the same price. They should be a lower price. And so typically it comes down to experience. What kind of experience was the client expecting? And usually we'll discover that earlier in the conversation. Is this a price-based decision or is this an experience-based decision? Because our goal is to give you the best value for your money, but we also understand that we won't be your cheapest bid.
Sure. No, absolutely. And just kind of in the interest of keeping us on time here too, for the folks watching at home, we have a couple slides coming up that I think are really going to inspire some interesting conversations. So I'm going to move on from the evaluating contractors into the timing of quotes received. And I know I've discussed this with some of you guys, off camera, just kind of chatting about, things in the world today. We have 21% of people now, 28% actually, expecting same day. Like, that's over a quarter of your bids. Like, how do you guys equip teams to, or how could you recommend equipping teams to be able to deliver that? Because that's not always a standard procedure for some companies.
Justin, I'm going to ask you to go back to that other slide just for a second, because I want to make an important point. Yeah. I don't ever want a sales rep to believe that they're getting 3 estimates, right? Because then they'll ask the scheduler, like, hey, well, which one am I? Like, don't waste my time. I want to be the third one. And I mean, if you ask someone like, hey, how many quotes you get? I think they're going to feel silly if they say 1 or 2. And I think that but if a rep goes out there and they do a good job, and I believe in a consultative approach, and it's a conversation, not a pitch, and help the homeowner come to their own conclusions and educate them and give them options and so on. I think if you do a good job, and most of our contractors are not the most expensive, they're not the cheapest. It's going to be way more than whatever you have, 5%. Like, I do a lot of work with Angie leads, and boy, if you're going to wait for it to be the third one out, you're probably not going to see that lead. They're probably going to go with someone ahead of time. But getting back to your next slide, in our industry, almost everyone is doing a quote on the spot. That's just how it is. Yeah, I mean, if you're waiting, it's like, the second lead goes out there and they do all that work and they have a quote on the table and they're ready to do business. And the first guy is like going to email the quote in a day or two. Like, I want to work with the guy that's much more efficient, especially with something like ArcSite. It's all there in front of you. The information's there. Like, I want to make my decision when all the information's in front of me.
Sure. So Joe, I know fencing has really kind of had some struggles with like materials and things over the last year and a half. Has that affected you guys at all? How long does it take you roughly to get a quote out?
Yeah, same day is our mission. In the past, we have been in the on the spot category, but at this point, just with materials changing drastically, material pricing can change from the morning to the afternoon. So typically, what we'll say is, well, let me verify the material pricing, and I will have you a proposal by the end of the day. How's that sound? And beautiful. Just to let them know what the delay is caused by, I want to make sure that this quote is as accurate as it can be for you, so that you can make an educated decision. But same day is important. We were talking before this that sometimes we'll receive the feedback that the client, after the project is over, we'll typically, we, as was discussed before, have kind of a closeout conversation, and we learn that this client was already under contract and moving forward in the sales process before 2 or 3 of the other contractors had given them bids. So they're typically unfortunately in the 3 to 4 day category in this, or more probably. So we see a lot of success by being in that same day category.
Great. What about you, Brian? I know artificial turf has a lot of variability in it. So does that affect your quoting process?
There is a lot of variability in it. We're fortunate enough, we warehouse our own material. So I buy truckloads of material at a time. It's warehoused here. So when the client representatives go out, they know what our inventory is. So we price on the spot. They're equipped with computers, printers, tools like ArcSight we use as well, which has helped. They quote right on the spot with the clients. They do a digital diagram so they can see exactly what they're going to be getting. We show them other jobs that have been similar, what the outlook will be. And then if they're willing to give a deposit and sign up, we tell them roughly when we'll be doing the job as well, because the guys are updated every morning with where the schedule's at. If it's a complicated project, sometimes we get into rooftops where we have to find out the logistics. Do they have a service elevator? How are we going to get material up there? Do we need a crane? If it's more involved, then typically within 48 hours, we have a quote back to them, a very detailed quote. We figured out the logistics part. If there's things beyond our control, then we let them know what is beyond our control. So we have to find out the facts before we can commit to it and reconfirm pricing, especially with COVID influence. that's changed some things. So we do price on the spot. I'm going to say the majority of our jobs before we leave, they have a portfolio folder with some supporting information about the product, our proposal, and a timeline in their hands before we leave. And the feedback we've gotten from clients is that's their expectation, and they're really disappointed if they're not getting it. They're on the same spot. When COVID first flared up, we weren't allowed to transfer paper. We weren't allowed to give people printed information. So we had asked permission from the client. May we have your email address? We want to email you the quote right from our truck. And then we'd go back to the door and make sure that they got the quote, and they would open it on their device. We'd have it on our device, and we could talk about it at that point. So we were still doing it on the spot. We find if you leave the property and the client's not informed with a budget proposal and everything, 50% less chance of getting the job.
Yep.
Wow. 50, that's a big number for those of you listening at home. 50% is a pretty sizable difference. So we asked folks at home, hey, when evaluating a contract, what's the most important factor that people consider? And these just kind of in order what came up. And I know it's easy to say price is always the most important thing. But word of mouth, presentation of the actual thing, references you're able to provide, trust, online reviews, all of that sort of stuff pops in. And I think it's kind of important to note that when people are evaluating contractors, what makes people least likely to hire them is kind of an interesting tidbit. So we found that about 2/3 of people were less likely to hire a contractor due to a poor attitude. So for, you guys on here, is there anything jumps out on here? Like things like no warranty and experience, poor communication, confusing bids, all the things here that can really spook people from a contractor. How do you guys go about kind of approaching any or all of these?
Hey, I want to say I love this, and I don't know if I saw this slide before this recording, but boy, for me, if I call a company and they're saying hello, like ABC Waterproofing, like I think it's more professional if they share their name, who's answering the phone, like who am I talking to, and it's more professional if they're saying how may I help you. And I really like when someone says, let me check on that. Can I put you on hold? Versus hold on. Those little things to me are subtleties to tell me how trained are these employees. And if they can't answer the phone right, what is that crew going to look like when they're on the job? Like I'm already envisioning no one's got uniforms. They don't know how to take orders. So I love the answers to your question here. I think it's really good.
Yeah, and Joe, you talked earlier about using that as a way to kind of justify the price of a bid, right? When you talked about your people answering the phones and your support staff being top notch. So you find that probably helps get rid of some of that. And the number that blew me away was, I guess at first it blew me away, but if I think back to it, 42% of people have had a negative experience with a contractor. So that's almost half of the people polled. So, over 1,000 pollees, and it came up with a huge number, like 42%. How would you, so Brian, you're, big into the growth of the businesses and your social media and stuff like that. How do you, if people do have a negative experience with a contractor, what do you do? Do you have specific actionable steps? Is it super case by case? Is there a thought out process?
As in a negative from us?
Yeah, like say somebody has a bad experience with one of your field personnel. I know it's probably never happened, but just say they do. Hypothetical.
No, honestly, it has. You work with a lot of people out there, and not everybody will see eye to eye. There's different characters. There's different thought processes. You don't know what's going on in their life. Maybe they're having a stressful day, and the answer they heard from a technician is not what they wanted to hear. So Typically, what we would do is our client representative would reach out to the client, say, hey, we understand there's, we're not quite seeing eye to eye on a couple of things. Can we have a conversation? And furthermore, if it can't be solved over a conversation, what time can I come and see you? We want to come right to your site and review this and see what happened. We want to understand how we got to this point. And we have a saying here where we'll make it right. Whatever happens, we will make it right. So there's different chemistry with different people. It's like oil and water. Sometimes they just can't work together. I do remember one project where our team leader, they just couldn't get along with the client. They just couldn't. So we said, you know what? For the balance of the day, if you don't mind, we're going to shut the project down. We're going to remove the crew. We're going to bring a different crew tomorrow morning. The client representative is going to come with the crew, introduce you to them, make sure there's a comfort level there before we carry on with the job or before the client representative leaves, because you already have a relationship with them. You do get along, you like them. And I mean, I do remember that one project, and at the end of it, we got a fantastic review from the people, how we handled it. We're, just open and honest, and we understand that sometimes people don't click. And, you have to be aware that it's a privilege to work for somebody on their property, and it's a privilege for them to have a contractor come and be as open and honest as we are to work with them. So it's a two-way street, and there has to be a lot of respect there. We really appreciate people working hard for their money, and then they're willing to spend it with our company. So if you get a bad review online, then reach out. Like it was mentioned earlier, just reach out to every review you get, whether it be good or bad or indifferent. And then it goes back to our saying, it has to be right. We go and make it right. And then we've actually got, I know one review on there for sure, where they said there were some bumps, there were some issues. However, we came back and we made it right. And that really, really impressed them.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'll make one note here too, that I think the attitude and professionalism applies not only to the client you're working with currently, but those that, for us, we always make a point to reemphasize to the team that when you're in someone's yard, you're also, you're not only being watched by the client, right? So clients typically have 3 to 5 neighbors, depending on how the neighborhood's laid out. But so it's, fresh, clean uniforms. It's the trucks are clean and well maintained, because as soon as the guys get out of the truck, they're being evaluated not only by the client, but those around them. Same thing for when they're fueling the trucks at the gas station, or they're at the supply house, that sort of thing. It's always important to maintain a good attitude and be professional, not just for the client, which for the client is incredibly important. However, there are others that are typically evaluating you and your team also.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're kind of always on stage when you're out in the field, right? What percentage of homeowners do you guys think prefer a digital quote over a handwritten quote? So this is the next poll question for you as you're watching at home. Feel free to take it now. And you guys obviously thoughts in your head. 75% prefer a digital quote over a handwritten quote. And I know that's probably evolved over time, just with the, time and the way things are, homeowners getting younger, more tech savvy in some cases, does anyone here do handwritten quotes? I don't think you guys do you? No. What was one of the things that made you guys make the change from handwritten to digital, if you have, essentially?
Professionalism. I mean, it goes back to that last slide, where I think it's a more professional presentation. If it's a digital proposal with supporting documentation.
Sure. What about you, Bill? What do you see in this sort of trend in the industry? I know you do a lot with helping businesses grow and continue to improve their processes and things of that nature. Do you see a handwritten quote in the waterproofing?
I can't get over that handwritten word, because in our space, there have been some people literally to write a number on the back of a business card, and we'll do it for this. It's like, are you serious? Like, who's gonna? But that's just how they roll. So handwritten, I think the 25% that are not saying yes to digital, I'm thinking it's maybe the older generation. They're just used to contracts and so on. I don't know, but I think we all see more and more people just getting used to, even when when you buy a house, you have to sign off on 50 pieces of paper. Well, even now that's all digital. And then you ask for a copy. It's already in your email box. Oh, really? Okay. Well, wow, thanks. We're just evolving more and more with technology.
What about
Yeah,
you, Brian?
the
As your business
evolution's
continues to grow? Ooh. No, go ahead,
sorry.
Joe. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, sorry to step on you there. No, I mean the evolution. I think is important to note because so when I started out working in sales for my dad, it was a proposal sheet that was in triplicate. So you would draw the house, you would select the options as far as materials and specifications for the materials, and then you'd write the number, of course, and you'd give the customer their copy. You take 2 copies back to the office. The problem with that is invariably those copies would get lost at some point. There was a percentage of these, you know, copies of paper that would get lost, either on the client side or on the office side. I think that was probably one of the driving reasons for us to go digital is just that we can maintain copies. You know, we can go back 5, 6 years ago now and pull up a proposal within a few minutes. So not only professionalism, I guess, but also a little bit more efficiency also.
So we actually find like everything is done through a computer program. It's all digitally done. However, we do find a large percentage, and I'm going to say off the top of my head, it's at least 50% still want a printed copy handed to them. We also email it to them. So we do email it to them so they have a copy in the email. We obviously have it in our program. We just change the designation from proposal phase to contract pending and then contract one. We're more than happy to do it completely digital if that's what the person wants. We find in the younger generation prefer that. They just want to whip it out on their phone or their iPad and whatnot. And you know, the email back, we're good with a quote, and they give us a deposit. Then you know that's pretty much as good as what a signature on a piece of paper used to be. Because once you email back, we accept the proposal number and they give you a deposit. That's as good as a signature. So we stay flexible. That's why we still have printers in trucks. If they do find that the client does prefer a paper copy, because then they might put all 3 of them side by side on their table, then we're more willing to do that for them. We find that our proposals are pages because we do have all our terms and conditions and what they can expect and what the warranty is and all that. Because as you're educating somebody, say within an hour, that's a lot of information to soak in. So if you can either email it to them digitally or hand it to them, they feel much more comfortable that's backing up exactly what you've said. And to the point there of a number on a business card, even last year, our client reps were reporting back to me, they can't believe how many competitors have a one-page proposal and handwritten on it. Like, we don't handwrite anything apart from a signature. It all gets printed out of a computer program, so it's easily read, it's easily documented, nothing can be changed, so the client's really comfortable. It's amazing to see, but I'm surprised that 75% want the digital quote, and I'm going to say over a printed copy, because I mean, handwritten I think is almost antiquated, but yeah, we're flexible for either way, whichever way the client wants it.
Sure. No, of course. And I think keeping that so you can cater to everybody obviously does definitely help. And to that point, when receiving a quote, are people more or less likely to select the contractor who uses software or tech was a question posed. 20% of people were more likely to select a digital proposal if everything else equal than if it was, handwritten. So how do you guys make sure that you're capitalizing on, a fifth of the potential business out there? Or what advice would you give contractors, I guess, who aren't?
We just come right out and ask the client, would you prefer a digital copy emailed to you, or would you like a digital copy emailed and a printed copy? Either way, we email it just so there is a record there for them. But I mean, again, we find a lot of people are asking for a printed copy, not handwritten, but a printed copy.
Yeah, digitally produced, but hard copy.
Yeah, we ask the client how they prefer it, and we just tend to their preference.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of you have to adapt to the customer. For internet marketing, some people like to do the web form, some people want to talk to someone, some people like live chat. So it's like different fishing poles to adapt to the customer. For the contract, actually, when you're presenting to somebody, are you using an iPad where you're just sliding pictures? Are you hand drawing it, or do you have a pitch book? We always teach to watch the homeowner to see kind of what they're most comfortable with and adapting to that. But as more and more people are wanting, technology, contractors are going to have to keep up with the times, and they're going to need to be able to offer that if they want to stay on the cutting edge of things.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway here is only 9% are less comfortable, with the contractor using technology. I think that jives with what we see. So our process is almost completely digital until after the contract's been awarded. Just different areas are different, right? So that's part of our pandemic pandemic proposal process. Just because, again, here in our region, there's pandemic protocols being put into place again, which are limiting the amount of face-to-face interaction. So in answer to that, we created this program. So the majority of our process is digital until after the contract's been awarded. And this probably jives with that. There's roughly 9 to 10% of folks that call in that aren't comfortable with that. And, we have to be okay with that, obviously. Just knowing that it's for the protection of our team, the protection of our community, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. No, that's all very great points there. And yeah, in like you said, a pandemic affected world, you can't always be there to hand over a handwritten thing. So yeah, it does make sharing and things like that a little easier. So, so kind of the final takeaway and polls. The last poll is up for the audience today. For those of you watching at home, any final takeaways from anybody on here around the report? That's the last official slide essentially that we've got with stats. The report obviously has stats for days, but just kind of anything that was kind of an overarching feeling from any of the panelists.
I think this survey serves the industry well, and I like that he had different, 3 different people from 3 different industries, and we have different answers that fit our industry best. It's just a good service to the industry. I think it needed to be heard.
Thank you.
Well, and I think it reaffirms what a lot of us have believed for quite a while, right? In terms of how many bids, what the driving factors in a purchasing decision are. I'm grateful for you guys actually doing the legwork on this and putting the proposal together, because like I said, it just reaffirms and reemphasizes a lot of what we have believed for a time, but actually puts it down and, puts data behind what the beliefs were.
Absolutely.
I agree with everything that's being said as well. And I think it's reaffirming for even homeowners that are going to be going out to hire a contractor. Say, hey, look at this survey. It is normal for us to get 3 quotes. It is normal for us to get it digitally sent over to us. And it just gives them some good confirmation and some good knowledge, really, when they're going to hire a contractor, that this is kind of the normal way it is. And if somebody is handwriting something, that may be okay for their business. However, it's more likely that we're going to get it digitally and on the spot and whatnot. So I think it's good information for people hiring a contractor.
Awesome. Yep. And the report is completely free for download right at arcsite.com/report. Or if you're watching live, you can download it from the handout section of the widget on the right. And then last but not least, we have a free download contractor checklist that kind of encompasses some of the data and just things to check off against your own business, just to kind of see where you sit compared to some of the answers that were out there. If you want that sent to you, you can just type checklist directly into the chat box. Otherwise, you can go to arcsite.com/get started to access that as well. I want to spend the last couple of seconds just thanking the panelists. You guys' insight was everything today. I don't have near the expertise and things in the industries that you guys do. So you guys all taking the time out of your day to help best serve these industries means everything to everyone watching at home, I'm sure, as well. So I'm sure they all appreciate it. And I just want to thank each and every one of you, Joe, Brian, and Bill, for spending an hour out of your day with us and just kind of helping us really put some context to a lot of these numbers. So thank you all very much.
Happy to help. Thanks, Justin.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think these are important conversations to be having.
Yeah, absolutely. Nope. And that's what we're here for, just trying to help, serve the industry the best we can. So thank you all. And for those of you watching at home, that concludes, the webinar around the homeowner survey report. Feel free to download it, get as much data as you can out of it, use it to help grow your business in 2022. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We can be reached multiple different ways. I mean, all these guys have nice digital presences. You can find us right on ArcSite, of course. And then, yeah, have a wonderful rest of your day.